So you took some time, like a sort of a break, I'm guessing, like a detox kind of thing from, I suppose 2 years is more than a detox, really, isn't it? So,
Oh yeah, man, it was a
um,
total put to one side.
yeah, was that music or was that just the online kind of world?
That was the online only, so I was still doing like gigs, I was still teaching and things like that. But yeah, I had massive mental health issues that like I say, it was like panic attacks daily that I had to go to like therapy for and all that kind of stuff. And so the pressures of the online world, even though it was smaller than today, so I can't imagine what it must be like for someone now, was just too much. The idea of having to post regularly, you know, I didn't really enjoy playing guitar. It took time for me to get back into that, and after the therapy, that was all good. And touring with, I played with a bass player called Stu Ham. Do you know him at all? He was the guy with like Vi and Satch and all them. That was when I was, I think, 24. Um, so that was kind of a boost of, you know, I can do this as a job. What are you doing? You need to really get back into things. You need to get back into playing. But then really it was, I guess, the pandemic, because I didn't have to focus on gigs anymore. That gave me all the time in the world to, I mean, I was back into practicing by that point as well, like really studying hard too. But that relieved all that pressure. And it's almost like, I know the pandemic was a horrible time for lots and lots of people. But for me, it gave me the time which I needed to go, I need to reorganize my priorities here. My dream has always been to do my own music, you know, to play the stuff which I want to play, not necessarily playing gigs just to pay the bills anymore. And thankfully and luckily it worked out. I know it doesn't always work like that, but yeah, I think it was the reorganization of priorities in my musical dream, shall we say, that inspired me to do what I'm doing now, I guess.
Yeah, it's I feel like the whole kind of that online oh, that's what I suddenly drew a blank, but I remember what I was going to say. Someone that I started following recently is a psychologist who does these YouTube videos. His name's Andrew Huberman, and he does these. He's like a Stanford psychologist, psychology PhD, or like he's a doctor of psychology basically.
Yeah.
And he has loads of really interesting like tips. But one thing he was talking about, he talks a lot about dopamine and how that kind of affects your processes, and you know what you're talking about, like not feeling necessarily excited to pick up the instrument sometimes. And I think a big part of it is what happens is before the online world, you pick the guitar up because you think, I want to play guitar, I want to practice, I want to get better, and I'll get reward out of just playing and getting better and maybe writing songs and stuff. But that is the reward. The reward is in the playing. But then when you start to post it online, the reward is in part of, at least the reward is in the statistics and in the likes and the comments and all that. And he said that it's a bit like any addictive behavior. He obviously wasn't talking about Instagram guitarists, but he was saying about like how, you know, if you start stacking these dopamine sort of releasing things, you know, so you're playing guitar, but you've got like, I don't know, Netflix on over there, and you're recording a video to post on Instagram, and you're scrolling Instagram as well. All of these things are bringing your like dopamine levels up, only to basically make it harder to enjoy and feel motivated to just play the instrument. So then you bring up this baseline of like, this isn't me. It's kind of half theory, but I think this is pretty established as an idea that, you know, if you have all these other things going on, you're essentially just raising that baseline. It's a bit like how, you know, someone who drinks a lot, they'll start on one drink, gets them drunk or a bit tipsy, then suddenly it's like three or four, and then it's like seven or eight, you know.
Bottle of vodka, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly the same thing. It's like tolerance, isn't it? So I'm really trying to figure out for myself where the balance is between, but getting the content out online, because I want to, I haven't done much guitar related content for quite a while, but like, you know, doing the content side of things. But actually, there's a balance to be found with your own psychology, you know. I don't know
Yeah.
where I sit on that yet. You know?
I agree. I read a study, funny you mentioned about dopamine. I'm sure this was like a couple of months ago now, but they did an analysis of, Conor McGregor, the UFC fighter,
Mm.
and it was like talking about his Twitter downfall. And they were saying that every like equals a shot of dopamine almost. But they were saying Conor went from the absolute pinnacle of, Twitter land, if you like, back then. But then he posted something controversial, or it was a loss, or something like that. Maybe it was the, Khabib fight or something. And his likes on his next post had gone significantly down. And they were saying they noticed the trend was he was trying to post more and more and more after that. And the likes were going down and down and down. And his posts were getting more outrageous and more outrageous. And they think it was this, like, the scream or the need for dopamine, which is something that humans, like, 10, 15 years ago didn't necessarily have, I guess, back then. We had social media, but it wasn't the same, was it? Like, not now. You couldn't see a number pop up with the amount of likes and the sheer number of likes that we get now as well. It was always like you'd be happy if like 7 of your mates liked a post on Facebook or something, back in 2009 or whatever.
Yeah. One, I mean, like with this podcast, I post reels. I'll do a few from each podcast just to like highlight. It's like it's a little advert and it's a bit of a highlight. It's for people to share so they can see. You can go, oh, this is what my podcast was like. And obviously reels. You see how many views and likes and whatever they get. And I posted the first couple and they got like, I think the Instagram likes you for your first few posts, so they got like a few hundred or something.
Oh, nice.
Which is okay. And then it kind of went down less and less to the point where it was getting like 20 or 30 at first. I didn't have a massive following anyway, but like I still don't have a massive following at all. But sorry.
Don't be silly, man.
But now when I post them, they regularly get a few thousand. But now if I get less than that, already I'm a bit like, what?
Yeah, it's like a benchmark is being set, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. If it used to be, I would expect it to get less than 100. So I just wouldn't. And it goes back to that whole expectation. What did they say? Sort of I can't remember. It sort of kills motivation, doesn't it?
Yes.
Kills happiness.
I can relate to that when you post like something that you're very proud of in terms of playing or, whatever, and you get less likes, you start thinking, have I done something wrong? What do I need to change? And then that can, if you don't switch that off, I find that you can end up posting things that are tailored to the platform, whether that's to try and stand out with technique or whatever, or the way it looks. That's got to be the thing. But that's a dangerous path then, isn't it? Because it can take you away from what you actually want to do in terms of your, as an artist, But at the same time, I get that content has to be tailored for each of these. Like an Instagram video now has to be a reel, doesn't it? It has to be vertical format. It has to take up that real estate on the phone. But yeah, it's a real, what's it? Sorry,
it's a good pun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but it's one of them. Yeah, I always like to try and say to myself, I know it's easier now to do that, but to try and stay true to what you like. So one example would be, I'm all about improvisation. And I remember back in the 2010s, early 2010s, my old teacher was a guy called Tom Quayle. And I used to go down and hang with him and Rick Graham. They were like almost like second father figures to me. And what we'd do is we'd sit in a room and just jam for, hours and hours and hours. I'd stay over for the weekend. I couldn't play anything like those two could, but it was the fun and it was the enjoyment. And the videos that they would post would be these long form 10 or 15 minute jams over, a couple of chords on a backing track. And that for me was the thing. I used to love sitting there watching through it. Now that things have changed and people want to hear perfection almost, I feel like that's disappeared a little bit from YouTube. So my thing the past two years, I guess, is I have been posting these long form things just for myself, and if other people enjoy them, that's amazing. If they enjoy it, I want to thank them for the support, but it's more for me to be like, this is why I play guitar. You know, like if it doesn't get so many views, I don't really care anymore. It's just a kind of nice thing to have. I think my point is here, I know I'm rambling, but my point is that you still want to have that part of you out there. Oh, man, sorry, my words have just gone. You might have to edit this out.
Nah, no editing. This is all. I know. I kind of. I'll come back to you, but it's kind of about sustainability, isn't it? Like, as in yes, it's all well and good, just pursuing all the likes and stuff, and yeah, you might do well at it, but you can't sustain that mental. Like, I just don't think you can keep the excitement, because that level of that requirement of dopamine release, going back to that, becomes so astronomically high that it's impossible to maintain, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like I think there are too many things nowadays that are too immediately exciting. Like, really weird example, but I play like chess online when I'm just a bit bored.
No way.
And just, yeah, I'm not very good. I'm pretty bad.
You and Owain would get on, man. He's a massive chess head.
No, we wouldn't get on because he'd beat me and I'd get annoyed. And I'm not very good. But my friend's like, you could be quite good. You're just not.
Oh man,
because I think he was trying to be nice. He was saying like, you've got the right thought processes and that you just don't like actually like learn. I just kind of do it and just see what happens. But I found like I would start by playing like 10-minute games, so you get 10 minutes, they get 10 minutes. So the whole thing can work out like at 20 minutes if you play the full game out, or longer. If you have like time things on. But now, like, if it's not like a 2-minute game either side where we're just like rushing through it, I kind of get a bit bored. And I'm like, that didn't take long for that to happen. And I wonder if how many things in life, are so sort of expedited that they've become too exciting. It's like things like I've stopped listening to music in the car because I feel like there's so many little things I think we do that make everything all the time so exciting.
Yes.
That like when you actually do something like difficult on the guitar that's not that exciting immediately, your brain just switches straight off because you're just like, well, it's not as exciting as that 2-minute chess game or that, like,
Dude, 100%. Like this is a topic I heard it was actually on another podcast. It was from my old teacher Tom, and they were talking about like time management for mortals was like the title of the episode. And on the episode there's Tom and David, and they have two different viewpoints on practice for guitar. And Tom was trying to say he never found that he could, I could be getting it wrong, so I apologize if I am, but he never found that he could do the whole thing, where someone goes, I'm going to do 10 minutes of this, 10 minutes of this, 10 minutes, and they section it all out, 10 minutes on sweep picking technique, whatever. The way he would practice would be, he was absolutely obsessed with it to the detriment of everything else that's going on in life. So health, being on time for a one-to-one lesson, like looking after yourself. Whereas David came from it, from the opposite angle, I should say, where he practiced in these chunked segments and he decided, I'm not going to be the best at sweep picking, I'm not going to be the best at this, but if I work on these sections, I can be good enough at these different topics, And I found that I related to Tom more. It was more, I've never been able to do that whole practice thing for 10 minutes. I would go into complete obsession about one aspect. But I'm finding that harder now with all of the distractions and now with all of the, you've got to make content, you've got to make a video. Although the other week, I think I looked at a concept by Frank Gambale and I sat there thinking, I'll only be here for 10 minutes. And I checked the clock and it was 6 hours later. And you're like, oh my God, where has this gone? It felt like being 15 again. But yeah, I think this whole element of distraction and not feeling satisfied because things aren't exciting, even with video games, man, I'm a huge video gamer if I get the time. But I've found myself turning on the video game when I've only got like an hour to play through it. And within 10 minutes, I'm checking the phone and I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, you're just literally looking at a comment or, you're watching a random YouTube video when the thing which you really would enjoy is sat right in front of you,
Yeah, I there's so I get wound up in the statistics for the podcast sometimes. I look at like how many downloads did this get? How many, and it's weird actually. What I did is if you want a handy tip, I don't know if you'd find this applicable,
Mm.
but I've got two phones. I've got the one. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm just the
UK, mate.
I promise. So I've got my just phone, the one I communicate with people with. But then I've got an old phone. It's kind of a bit slow now and a bit sort of rubbish. But I put all of my social media stuff, like as in my like news feed based social media, like Instagram, Facebook, the actual Facebook app,
Mm.
TikTok, like because I don't use TikTok. It's just for the podcast. But even then I found myself getting drawn into it. So put all of them on another phone. So I'll go on them. I will probably, once we're done actually going up, there's a reel I want to upload from another podcast.
Mm.
And I'll maybe check the comments for a little while because I know it's good for engagement and that to reply to your comments and stuff. So I do a bit of that. But I've noticed I feel just a lot more like, I don't know how to put it. Just, I feel better, I think, just because it's
Mm.
not on my phone. But I do find sometimes I'll just scroll and go to tap where it was, or I'll kind of look like, oh, it's not there. And I'll put my phone down again. So
That's
that's my
cool.
tip for anyone. You if you want that tip, and anyone listening.
That's actually really cool, man. Yeah, so it prevents the doom scroll, I
Yeah, well,
guess.
you just because it's kind of on an old phone. I just put the other phone in a drawer, and I still get distracted by like Messenger, and I still have like Google, so I can search stuff on this phone because I found there were too many times where I just needed to Google something quickly, and I just be like, I'm not going to install Google every time for that.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but beyond that, it's just like Messenger stuff, utility apps, and then it's in Google. So yeah, I think
that's
that's my.
genius, man.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, I mean, I'm thinking like, could I get away with it? It's one of
Yeah.
those. Interesting you mentioned about TikTok relating to, like comparing yourselves. I would say TikTok for me was the funniest because I don't even know if I've ever publicly said that I've got one, but I used it as a kind of let's put videos up and see what the reaction is because there's zero or there was zero followers there. And it makes me think this is what it would be like if I was to start fresh again. And man, the comments can be brutal. Like they're saying things like, "This isn't music. Oh, there's no feel to this." And like I was like laughing because you'll go on the profile and it's a beginner who's just starting to play or something, and you're thinking, "Oh man, really? I'm getting abuse like that." But I mean, it's one of them. It's fascinating because I guess I've been lucky that there's been some form of audience for these 15 years or whatever, whether that was really small or whatnot. But yet to start now would be, I think, the hardest thing to stand out. I mean, TikTok is evidence enough for me that I would not have very many people into my stuff if I go based off those comments alone. But yeah, it's fascinating, man. I really do feel for anyone who's just getting into this.